Alright, welcome back to another episode of a deep dive into Find a Joint Friday. Today we're going to do a hand cut through mortise. This is a really common joint, especially if you're making woodworking mallets. The wood I'm going to use for this joint is walnut and ash. I think they would go really well together. I'm going to use a wheel marking gauge to go ahead and lay out this joint. Going to start out with the mortise first. That's the female portion, and then the tenon is the male portion. I would normally use my marking knife to mark out where this tenon goes, but I left it at a job site, so this chisel will have to do, and it's actually doing pretty well. Using that square to get a nice straight line for where that tenon is supposed to go, and that pretty much makes a little box on the mortise, so that's the piece that we're going to cut out. I'm going to color it in with a pencil just to show myself with my simple brain where I need to chisel out, and then I'm using the depth of the actual mortise piece of wood to mark the tenon length. I added a little bit extra because I want a little nubbin to sit out the side, using that marking wheel again to mark on that walnut where that tenon is exactly needing to be cut out, because we're going to cut the cheeks off of it to make it a little bit more narrow to fit into this piece of wood, just like that. Now, I did say that this is a hand cut joint, but there is no law that says you can't use your drill press to hog out a majority of that waste on the mortise, and that's exactly what I did. Using this Chiseling dovetail saw to cut the cheeks are pretty much part of the joint that squares up against that mortise and gives you a little bit extra strength. It also keeps you from shoving the piece in too far, because you definitely don't want to do that. This dovetail saw is really good for this because it has such a thin kerf. It'll cut those pieces without really wanting to wander off of the material itself. I'm using some Bessie clamps to hold everything in place because I still am in the process of building a new workbench with an actual vise on it. So definitely was missing and wanting that during this joint. Well, one thing that really helps me in starting a saw cut like this is running the saw opposite of where the teeth cut, so in this case pushing it forward, and then also using my thumb as a little bit of a guide to keep it right on where I want to cut. With the tenon situated, I'm shifting my focus over to this mortise and again getting it secured to the table just for safety and keeping it from moving around too much. I got these new chisels from Zinwu Toolworks and they are super sharp and making this a lot easier to just chop out this mortise, and definitely recommend you guys going over and checking out their website and their tools. They are really good quality and they are very humble about what they do, but their products are probably some of the best out there in my opinion. One thing I should have done whenever I was laying everything out was mark this mortise on both sides, and I didn't do that, but I am doing it now. So I'm marking everything out on the other side. Cutting in from both sides is going to prevent blowing out a bunch of the fibers of the wood and gives a nice clean mortise. Also, if you wander with your chisels or something in the middle versus going all the way through that, it's just more forgiving to do it this way instead of ending up with a big old fat wallowed out hole on the other side of your wood. No one wants that. One thing I would recommend not doing is taking your chisel and prying it against the face of your mortise like that. It just makes it look like it's a looser joint than it is. You can steam it back into place a little bit, but it just causes more work for yourself. Instead, pull towards the middle of that mortise to break out those pieces. That way your joint looks nice and tight still. While I had the chisels out, I went ahead and dialed in the fit of the tenon by shaving just a little bit off of each side to make it sure that it fit in nice and snug. This test fit right here just shows how nice and tight this thing fits. Also, don't rock it back and forth like I just did right there, because again, it makes it look sloppy even though it's not. Bringing in that Boss Dog wood glue to glue this joint up and make sure it stays nice and tight, using that God-given glue spreader because I'm too lazy to go find my brush, and once I get this stuck together, all I have to do is let it sit. Luckily, because it is a through mortise, as long as it's pushed up against it and has a nice tight fit, you shouldn't need clamps. I wanted to add a little bit more detail to this joint, so once it was dry, I took out the chisels again and added a little hand chamfer to the end grain that was sticking out of this joint. These chisels are super sharp, and this is usually kind of the benchmark to see how sharp your chisels are, and you can see it really just cuts through it like butter with no tear out. This is how sharp they come out of the box, and they're just really satisfying to use, so sorry if I am just beating that into your head. I'm just really impressed with them. This is what it looks like all finished up. I did gouge the wood a little bit on the top side when making those chamfers, but it was nothing a little sanding couldn't take out. In comes the Wood Daddy wood finish. After putting all that effort into making this joint, I was really looking forward to putting this oil on and see that grain pop, and I wasn't disappointed. If you've made it this far into the video and you like what you've seen, I would really appreciate a like and subscribe, as we are a new and growing channel and every little bit helps. We make videos like this every Friday, so be sure to hit that bell icon as well to be notified whenever we upload. Now without further ado, here's those finished beauty shots. As always, thanks for watching.